Europe, before the war, did not look like one world waiting calmly for disaster. It looked like flooded boulevards, crowded markets, women fighting in the streets, children in outdoor schools, families leaving by ship, and refugees already moving across broken borders. These photographs were made before 1914, but many of them already contain the warning signs. Look closely, because the vanished world was not only beautiful, it was unstable. Paris, 1910. This is not a canal city. It is Avenue Montaigne, one of the most fashionable streets in Europe, turned into still water. A few years before the continent went to war, the modern capital was already learning how fragile normal life could be. Rue Surcouf, January 1910. The water did not crash through like a wave. It rose quietly through drains, cellars, and streets. People woke up to find that the city still had buildings and shop fronts, but the ground between them had disappeared. Rue Van Loo looks almost peaceful until you notice what is missing. No carts, no busy pavements, no ordinary street noise. Paris had entered the 20th century with electric lights and underground railways, but one flood could still make it feel medieval. At Pont Mirabeau, the river is no longer something beside the city. It is inside the city. The strange detail is scale. Bridges, quays, and boats all seem to belong to different worlds, forced together in one photograph. Galway, around 1900. The Cladder was famous for old customs, fishing families, and a way of life that outsiders already treated as disappearing. The children in the lane make the image feel ordinary, but that is the point. Vanished worlds rarely know they are vanishing. Salonika, then still part of Ottoman Europe. A meat shop is being carried on horseback beside an old Roman archway. It is bizarre and completely practical. An ancient city, a moving market, and everyday commerce all sharing the same narrow street. Vienna, around 1900. The Grand Boulevard looks confident, almost permanent. But this is the capital of an empire made from many languages, nations, and tensions. Within 2 decades, the empire behind this street would no longer exist. Berlin, around 1900. The traffic, uniforms, and monumental buildings belong to a city that believed it was moving upward. This was Imperial Germany before defeat. Inflation, revolution, and another war changed the meaning of every street like this. Edirne, during the Balkan Wars. The title of this video says before the war, but Europe was not truly at peace. Families were already being pushed across borders. Their bundles tell the story. When people flee, they carry what can still be carried. This road scene looks older than 1912, but that is what makes it powerful. War did not arrive first as strategy or speeches. It arrived as carts, animals, children, and exhausted people moving through mud toward a place that might be safer. This boy was photographed as a war veteran at 12. The caption says he lost his arm when he was 5 in the Balkan War of 1912. It is one of the hardest images in the set because childhood and military history appear in the same small body. Kirillov in the Russian Empire. This rare color photograph makes the past feel uncomfortably close. The clothing, wooden house, and still poses belong to an old rural world. The color reminds us these were not distant shadows. They were living people. On the SS Amsterdam, women and children from Eastern Europe sit on deck among heavy ship fittings. This is Europe before the war in another sense. People leaving before history forced even more to move. The old world was already exporting its own uncertainty. Les Halles, Paris. Before supermarkets and delivery trucks, food moved through crowds like this. Markets were noisy, physical, and social. The photograph is crowded because the city depended on people being present, touching goods, arguing prices, and carrying food home. A flower market in Paris looks gentle, but it also shows how public life worked. Streets were not just routes from one building to another. They were markets, meeting places, workplaces, and theaters of everyday survival. Albanian refugees head toward Turkey during the Balkan Wars. The photograph has color, but almost no comfort. A few years before 1914, borders were already being redrawn by violence, and ordinary families were learning that home could become temporary. This child portrait is small and strange, almost like a private memory found inside a drawer. Not every vanished world is dramatic. Sometimes it is a face, a studio prop, and a child who could not know what the 20th century was about to demand. Kardzali, 1913. The flag, uniforms and crowd place this image at Europe's edge, where empires, languages and faiths overlapped. The scene is not famous, but it carries the atmosphere of a continent that was already rearranging itself. London, October 1913. A suffragette is being arrested in public, surrounded by men in dark coats. The photograph is not just about one arrest. It shows a society negotiating who was allowed to speak, vote, protest, and be seen. Bond Street, March 1912. The broken glass was damage caused by suffragette action. It shocked polite London because protest had entered luxury space. The image asks a simple question. When a system refuses to listen, what does visibility cost? These suffragettes are not posing as symbols. They are carrying a message through the street. The signs matter because photography made protest portable. A campaign that happened in London could be seen across an ocean. A woman speaks from a cart in London, turning a street corner into a platform. Before radio became ordinary, voices needed physical height and a crowd. The cart is simple, but politically it functions like a stage. Inside a suffragette meeting, the campaign becomes paperwork, organization, and strategy. Street protest was only the visible part. Behind it were committees, printing, fundraising, planning, and women turning political exclusion into a machine of pressure. Another arrest, another crowd. The repetition matters historically, but visually we should not treat it as decoration. Each arrest created a public image, the state holding back women who were asking to be part of public life. Here, the suffragettes stand with flags, controlled and ceremonial. It is a different kind of power from the arrest scenes. The movement needed confrontation, but it also needed symbols, names and photographs that supporters could remember. This Thessaloniki survivor photograph is small, but the faces are still clear enough to matter. It belongs in the video as a human punctuation mark. Behind every border crisis were children waiting for adults to decide where safety existed. Refugee orphans in Turkey. The children are lined up for the camera, but their faces break the order. War creates statistics. Photographs return the names and bodies we do not have. This is why emotional images carry more truth than empty battle maps. Armenian widows with children, photographed in Turkey. The picture is quiet, but the quiet is heavy. Long before viewers know the full politics, they can read the essentials: women without security, children without certainty, and a future being decided elsewhere. London's open-air schools were built around the belief that fresh air could protect sick or fragile children. The rows of chairs look almost theatrical, but they came from real fear. Cities were crowded, disease was common, and childhood needed engineering. Dinner at an open-air school. The image is not dramatic, yet it says a lot about pre-war Europe. Public health, discipline, charity, education, and class all meeting in one outdoor room. In the garden class, children are learning with their hands. It feels peaceful, but it also reveals a society trying to repair the damage of industrial cities. The past was not only old buildings, it was systems built around fragile bodies. A peasant woman from Olonets province, photographed in old dress. The pose is formal, but the color and fabric make the image intimate. It preserves a regional identity at the exact moment modern states were beginning to flatten older worlds. This colorwork scene from the Russian Empire looks almost staged because the colors are so unexpected, but the practical details are real. Carts, stone, animals, labor. Early color makes the old world feel less distant and more vulnerable. Austrian prisoners of war in Olonets province. This image crosses the line from before the war into what the old world became. It is a reminder that the empires shown earlier did not simply fade. Many of their people ended up far from home. In the Caucasus, the camera records clothing, posture, landscape, and hierarchy in color. The picture expands the idea of Europe before the war. Not one neat culture, but overlapping borderlands where empire was visible in every costume and road. The final image is not a palace or a battlefield. It is a woman seated on wooden steps. That is the vanished world this video is really about. Not Europe as a map, but Europe as millions of ordinary lives photographed just before history changed the frame.